Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Our next guest has been on the hunt for the truth about the challenging subject of assisted dying and the End of Life Choice Act, which we'll all be voting on at this year's election. Her journey of discovery included interviews with those terminally ill, lawyers, doctors, and many more, which is detailed in her debut book, The Final Choice, which asks, is assisted dying the answer? We welcome to the cafe author Caralise Trayes. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Why? I mean, congratulations on this book, because it's a very difficult thing, I think, to write about, and it's a very layered subject as well. But you have managed to write it in a really personable way as well. What got you started on this journey?
Yes, I know it's an unusual subject to debut with as well, but really what happened to me is late last year I was doing a freelance job, and during one of the meetings I attended for the job, assisted dying as a topic just came into the conversation, and I came away thinking, I know very little about this, and it's something that is we're all going to face. So I started to do my own research. I, Googled and searched and watched, and what I came away with is so many questions. It really is a huge topic, and there's so many voices that are speaking into it. So a good friend, I was talking to them and they said, well, why don't you document your journey and turn it into a book so other people can discover what you're discovering and make it easy for people to understand. So that's how it happened.
That's exactly what you did. I have to ask, what is the difference between euthanasia and assisted dying? And will they become legal if we vote yes to this act?
Good question. One thing I did discover is that euthanasia and the actual other correct term is assisted suicide. They're two forms of assisted dying. We've called this legislation and this topic assisted dying. It's actually a euphemism. Right. But yes, they will both be legal in New Zealand if we vote yes to this referendum.
So tell us about some of the people that you interviewed for the book, and what are they most concerned about?
Yeah, that's one of the most incredible things that I found on this journey is people. We have incredible Kiwis. We have smart people, passionate people that have poured out their lives to these topics. But some of them include, I've got a palliative care specialist, Roderick McLeod. I've got international voices from Professor Theo Boer from the Netherlands, bioethicist, Margot Somerville from Australia. We've got doctors, lawyers, Queen's Council members, those on both sides of this discussion, really.
And what were they concerned about? Was there a theme running through it?
Well, I guess it depends on what side you sit on, but really, ultimately, we're all trying to achieve the same thing, and that's to help people through the end of life, to relieve some of the suffering that so many experience. So there is a common thread. There were so many topics that it touches, and each one had so much to contribute. It's a really fascinating read.
What about these stories from those who are terminally ill? Was there a common thread through their stories?
I think there was a lot to be learned listening to people that have faced death and are facing death. There are common threads. Some of them include that initial response when you get a terminal diagnosis, the grief, and the trauma, and the sense of having to let go and adapt to, the fact that your life has changed.
Were most of them, like with the terminally ill, are they pro-choice, or how? Was there a theme with that they all sort of sat on one side of the fence?
There is a variation from people that have this. The ones that I interviewed, most of them did. They saw a risk and a danger, particularly around those that have been diagnosed, that go through that grief. Many of them attempted suicide at different points in their journey, and they have concerns over this law.
There's obviously a lot more people to consider than just the person who may want to invoke their right to die like this. The family, the doctors, the people that actually have to administer the dose. Did you hear from all of them as well?
Yes, we've had. It was great. I got to speak to doctors, palliative care, lawyers, those that are in other countries that have done research on this, and they're all in here, and what they have to say, the information and their story and journey. Fantastic.
Why do you think people are so passionate about the act itself?
I think for all of us, it brings up some pretty big questions, life questions. What is it going to be like to die? What is a good death? What are we afraid of? What about people we've seen suffer? And how do we show compassion? How do we maintain dignity for someone through that end process? So it's personal. It's really personal.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? That is a journey that you can. Ultimately, you have to make that final journey on your own, don't you? So a lot of questions around that. What about looking at people in other countries or other country situations? Did you do that? That maybe chosen different paths?
Yeah. So. It's a huge topic. You could probably research for years. People have, but I spoke to a couple of key individuals, some that have researched that helped guide me through some of the terminology, the experiences. Someone that was sitting on the board in the Netherlands that oversaw this law and its operation. Ethicists that have been involved in this discussion in Canada, yes, had some input from those overseas voices because we need to learn from how this law is operating in other nations.
What about in the countries that have passed the Act? What did you find there?
Oh, a lot. Some interesting facts. Different laws, different nations and jurisdictions have different laws operating. They're all sort of slightly different. But some of the things that really jumped out to me, one is the motivation why people have chosen. It's not quite what I thought it was. And another was how you can ensure that this is a safe piece of law. How do we guard the law? How do we make sure the right people, the people we thought should be using it, are the ones indeed having access to it?
So what did you think the motivation would be?
I guess
for friends and family, because I'm thinking,
sure.
I would think I wouldn't want my friends and family to suffer, to watch me die if I was terminal. Was that the underlying theme, or did others?
Firstly, I guess we all assume suffering is the motivational cause why someone would choose this, and part of suffering's complex, but part of that is pain. I think a lot of us see loved ones in pain in the death journey, and we don't want them to go through that. So one of the incredible things that I found is research out of the United States. Some of the states have this law, assisted suicide, and they found that pain was not the motivational factor. There were other motivational factors such as feeling like you're a burden on people. One of the top three, losing the ability to go out and play golf, do the activities that you want to do, your recreation being inhibited. Factors like that, it surprised me.
Gosh, there's a lot to think about, isn't it? What would you like readers to come away with after reading the final choice?
What my heart, my intention and purpose behind this book has always been is to provide good information, to educate, to allow people to go on the journey with me and delve into something that can be intimidating and make their own choice.